The great colony ship Endeavour had once been a proud symbol of human engineering. Its silver body had carried families, explorers, and dreamers across the black sea of space. But now, the ship drifted silently near the edge of an uncharted system. The mighty engines no longer glowed. The lights flickered weakly, and the once busy halls were now empty steel corridors echoing with loneliness. Commander Daniel Cross walked slowly through the ship's long passageway, his boots making a steady sound against the metal floor. The emergency lights gave everything a faint red glow, like a dying fire refusing to go out. He had been alone for days. The last wave of survivors had escaped in lifeboats when the engines failed beyond repair. Daniel had stayed behind, refusing to take one of the final seats. He could still hear the words of a young mother he had pushed onto the last pod. "Why would you give up your place?" His answer had been simple. "Because I can survive longer than most," he told himself that. But deep down, he stayed because he could not leave the ship while people might still be hiding somewhere. Even if the chances were small, he searched deck after deck with the stubborn duty that had carried him through wars. That night, as he passed through the cargo bay, Daniel heard a sound that made him stop cold. It was faint at first, like soft tapping against metal, followed by a whispering echo. He raised his rifle slowly, his combat instinct sharp even though his body was weary. The sound came again, lighter this time, almost like small footsteps. Daniel frowned. No scavenger could have entered the ship without his sensors warning him. He moved carefully toward the shadows, his weapon ready. Then he saw them. From behind a stack of crates, 4 small figures stepped into the dim red light. They were children, but not human. Their skin shimmered faintly, colors shifting like liquid patterns across their arms and faces. Their large, luminous eyes reflected fear, hope, and exhaustion. They were Alari, a peaceful race Daniel had only seen twice before during his service. For a moment, the soldier stood frozen. The Alari were known for being gentle, fragile beings. They rarely left their home world, and when they did, they were usually with families or scholars. To see 4 children alone, stranded on a dying human ship, was something Daniel could not understand. The tallest child, perhaps 10 years old by human measure, stepped forward. Her voice trembled as she spoke in fluent standard. "Don't leave us, human," she said softly. Her small hands clutched tightly together. Daniel lowered his rifle immediately. The look in their eyes pierced straight through his soldier's shell. Hunger, fear, and the desperate need for someone to protect them. He knelt down so his face was level with theirs, his rough features softened. "I'm not leaving you," he said firmly. His voice carried the weight of promise. The children relaxed slightly, though they stayed close to each other. Daniel studied them carefully. Their clothing was torn, and their small bodies looked weak from lack of food. Somehow they had survived all this time in the cold corridors while he believed himself the last soul aboard. He asked gently, "How long have you been hiding?" The smallest boy, no older than 6, whispered, "Since the fire in the engine room." His shifting skin glowed faintly with blue sadness. "Everyone else? They're gone." Daniel's chest tightened. The Alari had a way of showing emotions through their colors. Their sadness was not just in their voices, but on their very skin. He knew immediately that he could not abandon them no matter what. He reached out slowly, and the tallest girl allowed him to touch her shoulder. "You're safe now," he promised. "I'll protect you." For the first time, the children seemed to believe it. They clung to him, and he felt the weight of their trust. In all his years of service, he had carried orders, weapons, and responsibilities. But nothing had ever felt as heavy or as sacred as this moment. Yet outside the silent walls of the Endeavour, danger was already spreading across the stars. Whispers traveled fast through the lawless reaches of the galaxy. 4 surviving Alari children had been spotted on a ruined human ship. To some, this was rare fortune. The Alari were considered treasures, symbols of purity, peace, and mystery. Their capture could bring millions of credits on the black markets, either as political pawns or living trophies. Hunters from different systems adjusted their courses, their ships cutting through the void like knives seeking prey. Back inside the Endeavour, Daniel guided the children to a secured chamber he had been using as shelter. He gave them his last protein rations, watching as they ate slowly, their eyes never leaving him. He could feel their silent question, "Will you really stay?" After they had eaten, Daniel sat against the wall, his rifle across his knees. The children huddled together, drifting to sleep at last. In the quiet, he looked at them and thought of Earth, of children running freely in the parks, of laughter-filling homes. These four were far from their world, yet they deserved the same chance at life. He whispered to himself, almost like a vow, "They'll have to go through me first." The soft hum of space surrounded the ship. Outside, hunters prepared to converge, their greed pulling them closer. Inside, one human soldier kept watch, his tired eyes steady, his heart unwilling to abandon the innocent. The story of the hunted Alari children had just begun, and so had the story of the human who would stand between them and the galaxy. The old colony ship Endeavor floated in the darkness of space like a wounded beast. Its silver body carried scars of fire, broken steel, and silence. Inside its quiet halls, Commander Daniel Cross sat awake with his rifle across his knees, while four young Alari children slept close together under a thermal blanket. For Daniel, sleep no longer came easily. His ears caught every groan of the ship's old frame, every faint hum of dying circuits. His soldier's mind could not rest, not when danger was surely on its way. He knew the galaxy well enough. The news of four Alari children would travel quickly. Hunters would smell the profit, and greed would drive them here like wolves drawn to the scent of prey. He looked at the children once more. Their skin glowed faintly with shifting colors, soft and peaceful in sleep. They trusted him fully now. That trust gave him strength, but it also weighed heavy. He had promised to keep them safe. But the truth was clear. He was only one human, armed with one rifle. Trapped on a broken ship, Daniel whispered under his breath, "I'll need more than hope to win this fight." The next day, the children followed Daniel through the ship as he searched for supplies. He showed them how to stay quiet, how to keep their steps light. The eldest girl, the one who had first spoken to him, asked timidly, "Why do we have to hide if the ship is empty?" Daniel stopped and looked at her with steady eyes. "Because the ship may be empty now, but soon it won't be." As if his words had summoned the danger, the Endeavor's sensors beeped faintly from the control deck. Daniel hurried to the console, brushing off layers of dust. The old screen flickered alive, showing dots moving in the black void outside. 2 small ships had entered the system. Hunters. His jaw tightened. They were faster and armed, and even if they were only scouts, more would follow. The price on the children's heads was enough to attract entire fleets. The children stood close to him, sensing his change of mood. The youngest boy asked, "Are they bad ones?" Daniel did not soften his answer. "Yes, very bad ones, and they'll come for you." Fear shimmered across their glowing skin, but Daniel placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's why I'm here. They'll have to face me first." Daniel spent hours preparing what little he had. He checked his rifle twice, counted the last energy cells, and scavenged the storage rooms for anything useful. He found old barricade shields, portable lights, and a half-working drone he could reprogram for watch duty. The children helped in small ways. They carried tools, handed him batteries, and even fetched water from the ship's recycler. Their colors flickered with nervous energy, but Daniel could see something else in their eyes now. Courage. When the work was done, the eldest girl approached him again. "Human, why do you protect us? You could have left. You could save yourself." Daniel looked at her with calm honesty. "Because no one else will, and because someone once did the same for me." He remembered a battlefield long ago, when he had been a young soldier. A captain had stood over him, shielding him from fire, refusing to abandon him. That captain had not survived, but Daniel had carried his lesson ever since. The strong must protect the weak, no matter the cost. The children nodded slowly, as if they understood more than their years should allow. The hunters struck sooner than expected. A sharp tremor shook the Endeavor as docking clamps rattled against its outer hull. The sound echoed through the corridors like thunder. The children gasped in fear, but Daniel raised his rifle and motioned them to stay quiet. "Stay behind the barricade," he whispered. "No matter what happens, don't move until I come back." He set them inside a locked chamber with the drone guarding the door, then moved toward the noise. His boots were silent, his rifle steady. He moved like the soldier he once was, every sense sharp, every muscle ready. Voices echoed in the distance, harsh, greedy tones. "Spread out. The children are here somewhere. Do not damage them. Alive, they're worth more." Daniel's grip tightened. His suspicion had been right. Word had spread. The hunters were organized, professional, and ruthless. The first one appeared at the corner of the corridor, armored and holding a plasma blade. Before the hunter could react, Daniel's rifle fired a precise shot, dropping him instantly. The sound of energy fire echoed through the hall and the hunt was on. The fight stretched through the abandoned ship. Daniel moved through shadows using his knowledge of the Endeavor's layout. He set traps with fallen debris, shut down doors to block their paths, and used every ounce of his training to keep the hunters away from the children's hiding place. But they were many, and he was one. For every enemy he struck down, more seemed to arrive. Sparks flew from walls as plasma bolts tore through the air. Daniel's armor grew scorched and his energy cells ran low. Sweat covered his face, but his resolve never wavered. Each time he pressed forward, he thought of the children huddled together, waiting for him. Each time he pulled the trigger, he remembered their plea. Don't leave us, human. After hours of skirmishes, Daniel realized the truth. He could not hold the ship forever. The hunters would keep coming, and sooner or later his resources would fail. The only way to keep the children safe was to move them. That night, while the corridors remained quiet, he returned to their chamber. The children rushed to him, eyes wide with worry. His armor was dented, his face marked with dust and exhaustion, but his voice was steady. We can't stay here, he said. The ship is no longer safe. We need to reach the escape shuttle, the eldest girl whispered. But, can it fly? Daniel gave a small smile. If I can breathe, fight, and walk, then yes, I can make it fly. It was not certainty, but it was hope. And the children believed him. Guided by Daniel, they began the careful journey through the dark ship. Every corner could hide danger. Every sound could betray them. The children clung to each other, and Daniel moved ahead like a shield, his rifle ready. In those quiet steps, something changed. The children no longer saw him as just a human soldier. To them, he was a wall against fear, a guide through darkness, and a light of strength they could trust. And Daniel, though weary and burdened, felt something awaken inside him. He had been a commander, a fighter, a survivor, but now he was something greater. He was their protector. Far away, more hunter ships were closing in, drawn by the promise of millions of credits. The galaxy wanted the Alari children, but one human stood in the way. The colony ship Endeavor groaned as if it could feel its own death. The engines were silent, the power was fading, and its metal skin bore the marks of fire and battle. Yet inside this dying shell, 4 Alari children walked closely behind the tall human soldier who refused to abandon them. Commander Daniel Cross led the way, his rifle in his hands, his eyes sharp. The children trusted him with their lives, but even trust could not erase their fear. Every few steps they looked over their shoulders, their glowing skin flickering with nervous colors. The youngest clung to his sister's hand, whispering softly, "Will they find us?" Daniel answered without turning back. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that made children believe. Not if I can help it. He knew the truth, though. The hunters would not stop. The price placed on the children's heads was too high. Millions of credits could change lives, and greed was stronger than mercy in this part of the galaxy. Already Daniel had faced the first wave. He had won, but the fight had cost him energy cells and precious time. The only chance left was the shuttle bay. A small craft still rested there, one Daniel had inspected before. It was damaged, its systems broken but not beyond repair. If he could reach it, if he could start its engines, they might escape. But first they had to survive the journey. They moved carefully through the long corridors. Daniel checked every corner before allowing the children to follow. His soldier's eyes caught every shadow, every flicker of light. The ship had become a hunting ground, and he knew predators were near. At one junction, the sound of voices carried faintly through the air. Harsh alien voices. Hunters again. Daniel raised his fist, signaling the children to stop. They pressed against the wall, their glowing skins dimming as fear spread through them. Daniel crouched low, listening. The hunters spoke in their own tongue, but the meaning was clear. They were searching, spreading across the ship, sweeping closer and closer. The eldest girl whispered, "They are so many. How will we reach the shuttle?" Daniel looked at her, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with determination. One step at a time. "Stay behind me." And so they moved again, guided by a human who had walked through war and fire before. At last they reached the shuttle bay. The massive doors stood partly open, rust and damage marking their edges. Inside, the single shuttle rested like a bird with broken wings. Its silver hull bore cracks, and its control panel hung loose, wires spilling out like veins. The children looked at it with wide eyes, doubt clear on their faces. The smallest boy said. "It looks dead." Daniel gave a short laugh, though his voice was tired. "So did I once, but I kept going." He placed a hand on the shuttle's cold surface. "And so will this." He motioned the children to stay inside the bay's corner while he examined the craft. He crawled under the panel, sparks lighting his face as he reconnected wires. His hands moved with skill. Years of battlefield repairs had taught him how to make broken machines breathe again. Minutes passed. The children sat silently, whispering to each other, their eyes never leaving him. In that silence, they saw not just a soldier, but someone fighting for their future. Finally, Daniel climbed out, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Engines might run. Navigation is damaged, but I can guide it. Life support will hold for a few days." The children's skins glowed faintly with hope. For the first time, their colors brightened in relief. But hope was fragile and danger was never far. The sound came suddenly, a heavy clang from the upper deck. Daniel froze. His instincts told him the truth. The hunters had found the bay. "Stay down," he ordered quickly. The children pressed low against the wall, their small bodies trembling. Moments later, shadows moved at the far door. Figures armed and armored stepped inside. The hunters had come in numbers this time, their weapons glowing with deadly light. One of them shouted, "We know they are here. Surrender the children, human, and we might let you live." Daniel rose slowly from behind the shuttle. His rifle was steady in his hands, his armor scorched but unbroken. His voice carried across the bay, strong and unshaken. "You'll have to take them from me." The hunters laughed cruelly, their leader stepping forward. "One human against us all? Foolish bravery." Daniel's reply was simple. "Not foolish, human." And then the fight began. Plasma fire filled the shuttle bay, bright bolts striking against metal walls. Sparks rained down as Daniel rolled behind cover, firing precise shots in return. His movements were sharp, trained, and unyielding. For every hunter who stepped forward, his rifle answered with deadly accuracy. The children watched in silence, their hearts pounding. They saw the human stand against many, his body moving with purpose, his will refusing to break. To them, he seemed larger than life, like a wall of iron between them and the hunters. Yet the fight was not easy. The hunters pushed hard, their numbers pressing closer. Daniel felt the sting of a glancing shot across his shoulder, but he pushed through the pain. His mind was clear. Protect the children at all costs. Step by step, he forced them back, using the shuttle as cover, moving like a storm through the bay. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, silence returned. The last hunter fell, and the bay was filled with smoke and the smell of scorched metal. Daniel lowered his rifle, breathing heavily. His armor was damaged, his energy cells nearly gone, but he was still standing. The children ran to him, their glowing skins bright with relief. The eldest girl whispered, "You saved us again." Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. Saving you means getting you off this ship." He worked quickly to clear the bay, dragging the fallen hunters aside, sealing the doors. His body ached, but his spirit was iron. The children stayed close, helping as best they could, their fear turning slowly into courage. At last, Daniel turned back to the shuttle. "We leave at dawn cycle. The longer we stay, the more will come. This ship is no safe home anymore." The children nodded, their colors glowing with quiet determination. They believed him completely now. To them, he was no longer just a human soldier. He was their protector, their guardian, the one who stood between them and the galaxy's greed. Outside, more ships were on their way. The hunters had failed once, but they would return in greater numbers. The promise of millions of credits was too powerful to ignore. But inside the shuttle bay, a single human prepared for the impossible task, fighting the whole galaxy to save 4 children who had no one else. Daniel sat down beside the shuttle, rifle across his knees, and whispered to himself, "As long as I breathe, they will live." And the children curled together beside him, slept not in fear but in hope. The shuttle bay was silent except for the low hum of the old engines as Daniel worked. Sparks flashed as he welded broken panels, reconnected wires, and forced the machine back to life. His armor was dented, his face marked with soot, but his hands moved with steady confidence. Behind him, the 4 Allery children watched closely. They did not speak much. They knew the human was carrying the weight of their survival, and they dared not disturb him. Their luminous eyes followed every movement, and their glowing skin pulsed softly with nervous colors. Finally, Daniel stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. The shuttle's lights flickered weakly, then steadied into a faint glow. It was not strong, but it was enough. "It will fly," Daniel said firmly. His voice carried certainty, even though inside he knew the craft was fragile and unreliable. "But we must leave now. More hunters will come, and this time they will not stop until we are surrounded." The eldest child nodded. "We will follow you." Before they boarded, Daniel took one last walk through the bay. His boots echoed against the floor as he checked every door, every shadow. This was his way of saying goodbye to the Endeavor, the ship that had carried humanity's dream so far before its fall. He placed a hand against the wall, feeling the cold metal under his palm. "You did well," he whispered softly to the silent ship. "Now it's time to rest." The children did not fully understand, but they watched him with quiet respect. To them, the human was not just strong. He carried feelings that reached beyond himself. They entered the shuttle. The seats were small, designed for short flights, not long journeys. Daniel placed the children together, securing their belts. Then he sat in the pilot's chair, his large hands gripping controls that resisted with age. He pressed the ignition. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence grew heavy, the children's eyes filled with fear. Then, with a sudden roar, the engines coughed and came alive. The shuttle shook, dust falling from the ceiling, but it lifted slowly from the floor. The children gasped, their skins glowing bright with awe. Daniel's jaw tightened as he steered toward the bay doors. "Hold on," he warned. The great doors creaked open, revealing the endless black of space. Stars glittered like cold fire, and the broken body of the Endeavor floated silently behind them. The shuttle shot forward, leaving the old ship at last. For a moment it seemed like freedom. For a moment the children smiled, but freedom never lasted long. No sooner had they cleared the bay than Daniel's sensors lit up with warnings. Multiple ships appeared on the radar, surrounding them like a tightening net. Hunters had been waiting outside, patient and merciless. "Of course," Daniel muttered under his breath. "They knew we would try to run." The children looked at him with fear. The eldest whispered, "Are we trapped?" Daniel glanced back at them, his eyes steady. "Not trapped. Just outnumbered." The hunters' voices crackled over the comm channel. "Human, surrender the Alari children. You cannot escape. We will let you live if you comply." Daniel switched off the comm without answering. He did not need to waste words. His choice was already made. Engines roared as the shuttle darted forward, weaving through debris and asteroid fragments around the system's edge. Behind them, sleek hunter ships gave chase, their weapons firing bright bolts of energy that streaked past the shuttle. The children cried out as the shuttle shook violently, but Daniel's hands never lost control. He pushed the old craft harder than it was ever designed to fly, guiding it through tight turns, slipping between rocks, and using every scrap of cover. The eldest girl held on to her siblings, whispering, "He won't let them take us." Her words calmed them, even as fear pulsed in their colors. Daniel's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay down. Don't be afraid. I've outrun worse than this." The shuttle was slow compared to the hunters' sleek ships, but Daniel had more than speed. He had experience. He flew dangerously close to asteroid fields, forcing the hunters to break formation. He powered down suddenly, letting one enemy ship overshoot before blasting its engines again. He even released old fuel canisters, igniting them behind the shuttle, creating fiery obstacles that destroyed 2 hunters outright. The children watched in awe, their fear mixing with admiration. To them, the human seemed unstoppable, as if the stars themselves bent to his will. But Daniel knew the truth. Each trick bought them time, nothing more. The hunters were many, and the shuttle's fuel was low. He could not fight forever. At last, the radar showed a small moon ahead. Its surface was rocky, scarred with canyons and hidden from long-range sensors. A perfect place to disappear if they could reach it. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He made his decision quickly. "We'll land there," he said. "We'll hide, repair, and plan our next move." The eldest child asked softly, "And if they follow us?" Daniel's reply was simple. "Then I fight them until I can't." The children fell silent. They understood. His promise was not empty. It was his truth. The shuttle dove toward the moon, the hunters close behind. Plasma fire rained down, shaking the shuttle so hard the children screamed. Daniel gritted his teeth, holding the controls steady. guiding the craft through the storm. At last, with a heavy crash, the shuttle landed inside a narrow canyon. Dust rose around them, hiding the shuttle from sight. The engine sputtered, then died. Silence returned, broken only by the children's shaky breaths. Daniel stood slowly, his armor scorched, his eyes tired but fierce. "We're safe for now," he said. "But they'll come. They always come." The children looked at him, their skins glowing softly. The youngest whispered, "Will you still protect us?" Daniel knelt, his voice strong and clear. "As long as I live, no one will harm you." Above the canyon, the hunters circled like vultures. They had lost ships, but their numbers remained strong. They sent signals calling for reinforcements. To them, this was no longer just a hunt. It was a war for a prize too valuable to lose. Inside the canyon, Daniel prepared his rifle, checked his remaining energy cells, and began setting traps among the rocks. The children followed him, carrying what little they could, watching every move. They no longer asked if he would leave. They no longer doubted. To them, the human was not just a protector. He was their shield, their fighter, their only hope. As the sun rose over the moon's barren surface, Daniel stood tall at the canyon's edge, his silhouette dark against the light. His voice was quiet, but the children heard him. Let them come. And so the next battle began, not for money, not for glory, but for the simple, unshakable promise of a human heart refusing to abandon the innocent. The moon was quiet, its rocky surface stretching endlessly under a pale sky. The canyon where Daniel had landed the shuttle was narrow, with high stone walls that rose like jagged towers. Dust swirled in the thin wind, carrying with it a silence that felt heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. But the silence would not last. Above the canyon, hunter ships circled, their shadows sliding across the rocks. They had come for the children, and they would not leave without them. Inside the canyon, Commander Daniel Cross prepared for the fight he knew was coming. His armor was battered, his rifle scratched, and his energy cells few. Yet his spirit was iron. He had fought through worse battles before, and though his body was tired, his heart burned with one purpose: protect the children. The 4 Alari sat near the shuttle, their luminous eyes wide as they watched him work. He set traps among the rocks, hidden explosives from salvaged hunter weapons, motion-triggered lights, and barriers made from fallen stone. His hands moved with steady rhythm, each action careful and precise. Finally, the eldest girl asked softly, "Human, do you think you can win?" Daniel stopped, looking at her. He saw not just a child, but the weight of a whole future reflected in her eyes. His answer came without hesitation. "I don't fight to win," he said. "I fight to protect. That's enough." The girl lowered her head, her glowing skin pulsing with quiet colors of respect. The attack began at dawn. The sound of engines filled the canyon as hunter ships lowered soldiers onto the rocky ground. Their boots struck the dust, their weapons glowed, and their eyes burned with greed. One of them shouted through a speaker, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Human, you cannot hold them. Surrender the Alari children, and your death will be quick." Daniel stood at the canyon's edge, his rifle across his chest, his tall frame like a wall against the rising sun. His voice carried back, calm and unbroken. "You want them? Then you'll have to walk through me." The hunters laughed, their voices cruel. Then they moved forward. The first wave came fast. Plasma bolts lit up the canyon as hunters rushed in. Daniel fired from cover, each shot precise, each movement sharp. His traps exploded with sudden light, rocks crashing down on enemies, dust filling the air. The children huddled by the shuttle, watching with wide eyes as the human fought like a force of nature. He moved from stone to stone, never standing still, his rifle answering every attack. His figure seemed larger than life, a single man holding back an army. But the hunters kept coming. For everyone who fell, more took their place. The canyon shook with the roar of weapons, the crack of falling stone, and the unyielding defiance of one human soldier. At one point, hunters broke through Daniel's traps and drew close to the shuttle. The children screamed as armored figures rushed toward them. But before they could reach the young Alari, Daniel appeared like thunder, his rifle blazing, his voice like iron. "Stay away from them." He cut through the hunters with skill and fury, his armor scorched, his body aching, but his will unbroken. The children saw him not as a man, but as a shield, a wall of strength that nothing could destroy. The eldest girl cried out through tears, "Don't leave us, human." Daniel turned his head just enough for them to see his eyes burning with fire. "I won't." And then he fought on. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The canyon floor was scarred with battle, the air thick with smoke. Daniel's energy cells ran low, his movement slowed, but he never stopped. Each time he thought of resting, he looked at the children, their glowing skins trembling with fear, and strength filled him again. But even a human's will could not change numbers. The hunters pressed harder, their ships lowering more soldiers, their weapons cutting through stone. Daniel knew the truth. This was his last stand. He looked at the children one final time. "When I tell you to run," he said, "you run to the shuttle and don't look back. Understand?" Tears filled their eyes, but they nodded. They trusted him too deeply to argue. The hunters charged again, this time in overwhelming force. Daniel rose from cover, his rifle firing until the last energy cell was spent. Then he drew his combat blade, standing tall against the wave. He fought like no other. Every strike was fierce, every movement filled with purpose. He was not just a soldier, he was a protector, a symbol of human spirit, a wall that refused to fall. The children watched, with tears streaming down their faces as the human they had begged not to leave stood alone against the galaxies, greed, and though the hunters pressed with all their might, they could not break his will. Just when it seemed the canyon would be their grave, the sky above filled with light. A fleet of ships appeared on the horizon, Alari ships drawn by the signals of the hunt. Their elegant vessels descended like shining guardians, weapons firing with precision, scattering the hunters in panic. The children gasped, their skins glowing bright with joy. "Our people," they cried. Daniel fell to one knee, his strength nearly gone, but relief filled his chest. He had held long enough. He had kept his promise. The Alari warriors landed swiftly, driving the hunters back, protecting the canyon. When they found the children, the young ones ran into their arms, safe at last, but even as they embraced their people, their eyes turned back to the human who had saved them. Daniel sat against the shuttle, his rifle at his side, his armor broken. He looked at the children one last time. "You're safe now," he whispered. "That's all that matters." The eldest girl ran to him, tears glowing on her skin. She took his hand, small and trembling. "We will never forget you, human. You are one of us now." The other children nodded, their glowing colors bright with gratitude and love. "Don't leave us," they begged again. But this time their voices carried hope, not fear. Daniel gave a tired smile. "I'll never leave you. Not here." He touched his chest. "Not in here." And the children understood. The legend of one human. When the Alari fleet carried the children away, they carried with them a story of one human soldier who had stood against countless hunters, who had refused to abandon four fragile lives, who had made a promise and kept it. Across the stars, the tale spread. To the Alari, he was a guardian. To other species, he was a warning. To humans, he was proof of what their kind could be, stubborn, fierce, and full of heart. And in the memory of four children who had once pleaded, "Don't leave us, human," Daniel Cross lived forever.